Welcome, my dear parishioners. This idea came up through our Director of Operations, Amy Burton, that we would have a question and answer session just as a way of staying connected during these difficult times. So without further ado, let's get into it. So here are some of the questions that you all presented.
Now, the best part about this is I get to stay off of camera, so it's really the only way it's going to happen. My first question is going to be a bit of a doozy. Kathy Fetko asked, the Holy Father has said we can obtain a plenary indulgence by praying for an end to this pandemic and praying for those who are sick, who have died, and who are caring for them. Can you explain what a plenary indulgence is and go over what we have to do to obtain it?
I'm going to give you all the official definition of an indulgence in the Roman Catholic Church, and this will be the only time during this question and answer session that I'm using a script, so I can explain it to you to the best of my ability. Here is the official church teaching of an indulgence. An indulgence is a remission before God of the temporal punishment due to sins whose guilt has already been forgiven, which the faithful Christian who is duly disposed gains under certain prescribed conditions through the actions of the Church. It could be partial or plenary, according as it removes either part or all of the temporal punishment due to sin. The faithful can gain indulgences for themselves or apply them to the dead. And here are some of the devotions and ways to get indulgences. 1, online Mass or visit to the Blessed Sacrament. 2, praying the Stations of the Cross. 3, praying the Holy Rosary. 4, praying the Creed, Our Father, or Hail Mary. 5, pray the Divine Mercy Chaplet. 6, read the Bible for 30 minutes. And 7, all who expose themselves to take care of the sick or pray for their relief, the eternal salvation of the dead, imploring God to end the pandemic. That is the official definition of an indulgence in the Church. To me, an indulgence is kind of like extra credit. It's kind of going above and beyond and doing what we can for the needs of others. And certainly, we've had some great examples of the things we can do through prayer, through just being present to one another, even in this time of social distancing, where we can still remember that we're not alone in our suffering and that we can do things to gain an indulgence, either partial or plenary. So that, to the best of my ability, is a way to explain an indulgence. Think of it as extra insurance, extra credit, going above and beyond what is required, so that we are still doing things to pray for and to strengthen other people who might be in need.
And one of the great things is that we're offering the weekend masses on videos.
You know, we are offering the weekend masses on videos, and we will continue to do word services Monday through Friday. We have also taped the praying of the Stations of the Cross. We have also taped the mysteries of the Rosary, the joyful, the sorrowful, the luminous, and the glorious. And those are all posted on our Facebook page or on YouTube, so that those are opportunities just to follow along. And I am more than happy, and at some point we'll even explore praying the Divine Chaplet online, so that we can get together and pray it. I believe it's recommended that we pray it at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay.
So we will get the Divine Chaplet Mercy prayed and taped, and that'll just be one more opportunity to gather as a family of faith in this time of social distancing, where we are doing what our Pope has asked us to do.
Beth Hatton has asked, what was your favorite out-of-school activity as a child? Because she is a little worried that she's starting to run out of ideas for her own children. Okay,
well, growing up with a large family, we truly did all sorts of things, and even as adults, when we get together, we still do these things. Fortunately, I came from a family of readers, so we read a great deal. But my mother would play the piano or play the organ, and we would sing songs. And then we played all kinds of games. We played ping pong, we played Chinese checkers, Life, Monopoly, Operation, Pictionary. We put together jigsaw puzzles. And believe it or not, we had story time. My parents grew up during the Great Depression and during World War II. And so I loved listening to their stories because my mother was one of 7 children, my dad was one of 7 children, I'm one of 7 children. So we came from a very family-oriented background where we were always with people. We were always listening to stories which fascinated me. And I'm not so sure that families do it as much in this day and age, in this age of technology, where everything is communicated online or through texting or through Instagram. There's a lot to be said for the spoken word and just sharing stories. And so that was a big part of my growing up. Also, as a family, prayer was a huge part of my Catholic upbringing. I have shared many times that after dinner, we did not leave the dining room table until we had prayed the rosary together. Or my father would read sacred scripture to us, but we were familiar with a variety of prayers. And so that's one way that our parents kept us in the loop. As far as specific, a favorite thing that I did after school, I, like any child, when the weather was when permitted and we weren't in the middle of a pandemic, got outside and played tennis, rode my bike, ran, walked, played croquet, did all sorts of things. And then on those days when we couldn't get outside, we found ways of entertaining one another, and we were very creative. I will tell you this, and children, I'm telling you, do not do this at home. I can almost guarantee you it will result with you being grounded or severely punished. One of the things my siblings and I used to do on rainy days when we couldn't get outside is we would take one of those rubber rafts that people float on in the pool, and we would inflate it. And then head first, we would come down the stairs into the entrance foyer, and we would all take turns, and I know it drove Mom up the wall. Fortunately, there were no injuries. She was not pleased. Neither was Dad, because they were afraid, not that we would get hurt, is that we would put a hole in the wall. So that was their concern. So we were punished. And anyway, do not try that at home because you'll get in big trouble. But that was one of the things we used to love to do. And then practical jokes. I've always had birds when I was growing up because it was a hobby of mine. And my sister Judy, if she wanted to borrow an article of clothing of mine, such as a sweater, and what she would do is take my birds and hide them and leave a ransom note on my bed, that if ever I wanted to see my birds alive again, I would leave this particular sweater on the on the banister going downstairs, and then I'd get my birds back. So
these are examples of what not to do.
Yeah, these are things not to do. Do not hold your family pets hostage. But these are the things we did. We found ways to make each other laugh. And to this day, whenever we get together, we spend more time laughing. And one of the things I would tell families, especially now during this pandemic, coming from a large family, we fought like cats and dogs. We got on each other's nerves. And we knew how to push the envelope, and we knew how to push each other's buttons. And I can't tell you a specific time or age, but eventually we all began to see each other as individuals with strengths and stresses and issues. And we started to respect one another. And now at nearly 60 years of age, I can honestly say that those brothers and sisters that I fought with like cats and dogs, we are so close to one another. We still get together several times a year. We talk during this pandemic on a weekly basis just to check in, to make sure we're all okay. And we're laughing and cutting up about things. So family is important, and no family is perfect. Every family is dysfunctional in its own way, but every family is also functional in its own way. And during these difficult times, be creative about things to do and tell the stories and play games and just be present to one another and support each other, and we will get through it. So no real specific favorite activity. A lot of things come to mind that I hold very, very close to my heart as fond memories.
That's sweet. From Kathy Fetko, nope, already did that one. From Deb Jackson, your homilies are brief and effective. What is your technique when you write them? They just pop into your head? Do you pray for guidance? Do you Google things? How do you come up with your homilies?
Okay, well, first of all, I will tell you that every sermon I do is 100% my own. And if I get an idea or take an idea from something I've read or a quote from a saint, I always give that same credit. But other than that, every sermon I do is completely 100% my own. I can tell you that one of the true reasons I don't give very long sermons is I have such a morbid fear of public speaking. I would never put myself in a position where I could be ridiculed, poked fun at, critiqued, so it would make me very uncomfortable. So I try to be very direct and to the point when I'm choosing a subject or a sermon. Usually I will go through the readings and there will be a word or a verse or a theme, and I think I really, really like that. And I think, okay, let's go with it. And every now and then I will write out a sermon and I'll think it doesn't feel right. And that happened for the first week of Lent this year. I had written initially for the first week of Lent, or the second week of Lent, about what the scrutinies are and what we would be celebrating throughout the Lenten season. And to me, it was just too academic. I thought, I don't like this. It's just too much information. And I forget now what I wrote about, but it came to me. I thought, no, this I like much, much better. A lot of times, if I'm stumped, I will listen to an opera. Believe it or not, that helps tremendously. One of the sermons that I gave that came to me kind of in a flash, and I'm not exaggerating when I tell this story. It was during preparing for Holy Week. I had no sermon for the Mass of the Lord's Supper when Jesus washes the feet of the disciples. And I was in the loft at St. Leo doing my sit-ups. And I was listening to the greatest hits of Stevie Nicks. And so I'm listening and I'm thinking, and a song came on of hers called Stand Back, and she mentioned something about reaching out a hand. And as I was thinking of that lyric, I was doing my sit-ups, and the Stations of the Cross were right before me. And I kept focusing on Jesus' hands and the lyrics of Stevie Nicks. And this sermon came to me about everything that Jesus did with his hands, how he washed the feet of his disciples, how he reached out and touched a leper. And I thought of all the things we could do with our hands that are positive and uplifting and loving and joyful. And I gave a sermon on that, about how we can use our hands openly or with clenched fists. We can either use our hands to hold people close, or we can use our hands to push people away. And so I've always certainly given thanks to God for the inspiration, but I have to give a little gratitude to Stevie Nicks. So when I'm doing, this is how I work on sermons. I do not overthink anything. I don't overanalyze it. When I'm up here giving a sermon, whether I'm using a script or during weekdays when I'm not, or when I'm doing children's masses, I want to be as direct and to the point as I can. When I was in seminary, I was taught, say what you need to say, and then sit down and be done with it. That you don't need to reinvent the wheel, and you don't need to keep talking about this and that, and throw in everything but the kitchen sink. So usually that's kind of the way I approach it. And I also look upon a sermon as spiritual homework. I've heard it said that if you want to know what issues a priest struggles with, listen to his sermons, because 99% of the time he is preaching to himself. And so I tell myself, okay, if I'm struggling with judging other people, or if I'm struggling with being impatient, or I'm struggling with whatever particular cause, I know someone else is too. And a very wise priest, my first pastor, said, go into every Mass and every sermon with the intent that you want to change one person's heart, that you want one person to think of things differently, that you want to give one person something to work on. And that's kind of in the past 19 years the way I have approached it. And while I can't say that I've overcome the morbid fear of public speaking, I have grown more comfortable in the ability to laugh if there is a mistake. And laughter helps me tremendously, because if I can make other people laugh. I do not come into a Mass with the intention that this is entertainment. I'm going to make a joke, or there's going to be a flub up, and we'll make people laugh. If it does happen, then I'll crack a joke and we'll move on. But the laughter immediately relaxes me and lets me know everything's okay. You know, the world's still standing, the church is still here, life goes on. So I've learned to become more comfortable with it, although I doubt, given my nature, because I am somewhat of a loner and very much an introvert, it takes a lot out of me. But a former seminarian once said, God gives you the grace to do what you need to do when you need to do it. And so for 19 years, I am very, very grateful for the grace of God and hope that it will continue.
And just an aside for our younger viewers, since you mentioned you listen to opera and then only mentioned Stevie Nicks. Stevie Nicks is not an opera singer. Just for those that might not know.
Ask your parents. She was a part of a rock group called Fleetwood Mac.
There you go.
That I might add is the only group other than Kiss, which I won't talk about. I saw Fleetwood Mac in concert in 1978 at the Rupp Arena. So I've only been to 2 concerts in my life: Kiss in 1975 and the Fleetwood Mac in 1978. And I will tell you, I was close enough to the stage that I could see the eye play of Stevie Nicks as she's singing, as she's making contact with the other band members. And it was truly a very memorable experience. So if you can go online, look up some Stevie Nicks videos. I think she's wonderful.
Yeah. Just wanted to set that straight.
Okay.
The Seton 4th grade class has asked a very serious question.
Okay.
What is your favorite cupcake?
Okay. Regarding cupcakes, there is no such thing as a bad cupcake. There's no such thing as a bad dessert unless it's rhubarb pie.
Oh.
Everything else, my father loved rhubarb pie. We had an apple tree in our backyard and we grew wine saps, and they always ripened about October. And I always loved all the things Mom made with those apples. There was applesauce, there was homemade apple pie, fried apples. And on Halloween, as we went out trick-or-treating, we would come back and she would have taken some of the apples and dipped them in caramel. And so we would have caramel apples. So from our own tree, so it was kind of special. So cupcakes, I like contrast, like the chocolate cupcake with white icing, or a white cupcake with chocolate icing, or anybody who knows me knows I love desserts, so love any and all cupcakes. Although I will admit, if they have like jelly beans or gummy bears on them, on the top of the icing, I'm more likely to pick the gummy bears and gumdrops off and just eat the, and the best way to eat a cupcake is to rip the bottom part off and eat all the cake part. And then the ratio of the icing to the cake is much greater, and a cupcake will take much, it's good.
Strawberry with strawberry frosting.
Oh, yes.
That's the right answer.
Yes.
I'm sorry. So we'll go with that. Paula Blanton asked, will Bishop Stowe grant a general absolution to everyone in the diocese if this crisis persists?
Okay, I hope everyone will hear this, because I think people's anxieties are all over the place. During this pandemic, as long as there is not a public Mass, no one is not fulfilling the Sunday obligation. It is not a sin. We want people to be safe and healthy during this time. And I would even be willing to bet this crisis will come to an end eventually.
Yep.
And that we'll be able to start congregating again. I feel that there will be people who are still going to be worried about coming together as a congregation or worshiping as a family of faith, even that would not be a sin. I mean, people have to do what they need to do to take care of themselves. But no one is committing a sin. And, if you can watch the Mass on TV, you are fulfilling the Sunday obligation. Please keep in mind, it won't be actual communion that you're receiving. It'll be spiritual communion, but it is still a way to stay connected. And we will offer the Masses online as long as this pandemic continues, as a way of helping people to fulfill their Sunday obligation, and as a way of still coming together as a community of faith, always realizing that though we might be social distancing ourselves right now, Mass is still the source and summit of who we are. And it is still the Word of God by which we are challenged, and the body and blood of Christ by which we are nourished. So no, it's no sin, and we'll continue to do what we can to stay spiritually and faithfully connected.
Now, our last question was anonymous.
Anonymous.
And it's very important. And they would like to know if you have a particular favorite staff member on the church side.
And I can't tell you honestly at this particular point that after 3 years, I really even like any of them. They make my life a living hell and every day.
Children are watching.
It is torture. Now, it's honest to God, and I mean this with all sincerity. In 3 years, and even though I know that I'll be leaving, I am humbled by the way the staff comes together each and every day to make my life easy, to make me look good, and they do everything humanly possible to keep this parish running. I think the vast majority of parishioners would be shocked how much work actually goes on behind the scenes each and every day, and all that we try to do to meet the needs of an entire parish. And this is a very diverse parish. There are a lot of needs. We have elderly, we have widowed, we have young people, young families, we have people who are just starting out, we have parents with teenagers, and fortunately, the staff well represents the entire makeup of this parish. I cannot say that I have a particular favorite. Each one is very special to me for a different reason. Every analogy lives. I'll give you the analogy my parents gave me, because growing up being part of a large family, our concern was one of our siblings would always get more attention than someone else, or someone else was liked better. And my mom and dad would say, "We love you all the same, but you all are special to each of us for different reasons." And for saying that, the staff means a great deal to me for different reasons, and the fact that they do what they need to do and keep me informed. And I'm very humbled and very touched about all that they do each and every day to keep the parish running, to keep me informed, and to keep me going and letting me know what I need to do and when I need to do it. So,
like videos like this.
But now that I've said all that, and I'm not sure if you bought any of it, Amy Burton is my favorite.
Yay!
Because she has been so patient taping all of these, and this is honest to God's truth. Everything has been done so far, with the exception of the praying the sorrowful mysteries, in one take.
Yes.
Everything else was one take. But the sorrowful mysteries, we both got tickled because the very first mystery, the agony in the garden, the scripture verse is, being in agony, he prayed all the more. And I said, being angry, he prayed all the more. So we had to go back, and we got the church giggles, and we laughed, and then we had to go back and retape everything. But she has been, I have to admit, they're arranging their schedules to work with me, because I've had a lot to do with the seminarians these past couple of weeks as the seminary shut down, trying to find placements for all of our seminarians, which I might add, please keep them in your prayer during these difficult days, because they're young men who very much need it, and their world's also been turned upside down. But I love each and all of the staff members. They have been very, very, very good to me, and I'm very grateful, and I feel honored that I have been able to know them and work with them over these past 3 years.
I can't wait for Joe Cupcake especially to hear that.
Joe Cupcake. Okay, Joe, you're really my favorite.
Oh, stop. No. I'll cut that out.
Okay.
Edit. Well, Father, thank you so much for agreeing to do this and for being patient with me as we, we make up all these new things that we can do.
This is new territory for all of us.
And I hope everyone out there really, truly understands just how much you all are still in our prayers and our thoughts. We miss everybody tremendously. This is really difficult for those of us that work over here in the school and the church to be so separated from everybody. But hopefully these videos bring a little smile.
And Amy and I, we are 6 feet apart.
Yes.
So
at all times.
But yeah, it's so I appreciate it all. Also, please don't forget, and I'm sure you're doing this already, just continue to pray.
Yeah.
This is where the rubber meets the road. Faith is an all or nothing proposition. It's not like a buffet or a salad bar where we go in and pick and choose what we want. Faith is good times and bad times. It's laughter and tears. This is where we really show what we're made of, knowing that with God's grace, we will prevail and we will be a stronger people for it because we have persevered. But God is with us every step of the way. So let us continue to lift one another up in prayer, to be encouraging, to be kind, knowing that the love of God and the love of family and friends will sustain us in these times of difficulty.
Well, we really appreciate it, Father. Thank you.
You're more than welcome.
All right, and until our next one, we'll say goodbye.
Adios.